Welcome this week in Missouri Politics. Special guest this week, Governor of the state of Missouri, Mike Parson. Governor, welcome back to the show.
Good to be here, Scott. Good to be here.
I tell you what, so it's been about a year since you've been in office, and Mother Nature has put you to the test early on.
Yeah, it's been tough for Missouri here lately.
So let's talk about a lot of our viewers are in central Missouri know about the tornado that went through Eldon, Carl's Junction, but Jeff City has gotten a lot of the attention. Your team has been on the ground. When you get the notice that a tornado has touched ground and there is damage, what all do you go into the response for that, and where does that start?
Yeah, I think we start off with the response. What our job is as the governor of that, what I need to do as far as SEMA to make sure they're available, getting law enforcement, making sure those local levels have all the resources they need at that initial time. Because it's overwhelming at first, to say the least. But, we traveled. We went to Jeff City. We were there that early morning hours once it got daylight. We were in Eldon and Carl Junction. But I'll tell you the other thing that's amazing. It's amazing how many good people were out there on the ground already that I had a chance to meet along with some of the homeowners, and how many people were out there helping. And it really makes you proud of Missourians when you see those kind of people out there doing the right thing.
Walk folks through that may not know, when you're in the governor's mansion in Jefferson City, I guess.
Right.
And everybody had the warnings early in the evening. There could be storms, and it didn't strike too late at night. What is the process of someone coming and getting you and alerting you, and then you having, I guess, go to the command center?
Yeah, we actually go, there's a center there in the mansion that we go downstairs to, the basement, a secured area, and then you get live feeds. We're watching the weather maps like everybody else is in the state. But the only difference is you're getting live feeds from what's going on around the state or in that Jefferson City area. So when those tornadoes was actually touching down, we were knowing real time that this is really happening. And that's when it just comes, the reality of it is, for all of us most of the time, listening audience, I want to say, you always hear of a tornado touching down, but you don't actually see that or feel that when all of a sudden you hear those reports that, hey, there's damage here, there's damage here. It didn't take very long to realize this is very serious, lots of problems.
Well, I guess in this case, you just looked out the window, right?
Yeah, well, it's not quite that easy, but it was close enough that you knew what was going on.
Let's talk about the flooding. I mean, really, our state has a history with flooding dating back to when it was settled. But right now, when you look at the flooding, that's really going to have a long-lasting effect on these communities. Yeah,
that's been something we've been worried about now for weeks now, trying to see where this flooding's going. And that unfortunately, but Mother Nature just has her vengeance sometimes, and we just got to go with it and do the best we can to control it. So right now, we're still concerned. We're not out of the woods of this yet. We're concerned about this weekend in Missouri, about what's going to happen, and where the future that's going to be, and then how we're going to regulate. Be a part of the regulatory side of managing the rivers is important to me to figure out a solution to that.
You've had a career in public service, but I think a lot of people know you were a sheriff. In this situation, when dealing with these disasters, that has to come into play a little bit, your training in law enforcement.
Oh, yeah. I think the first thing you look at is, that next day or the following day, what are you doing to secure these people's property and to secure the areas? Because, like it or not, there's going to be people out there doing unlawful things, and you got to be prepared for that, and law enforcement does. Is one of the things when I met with the local level said, look, these early 24 to 48 hours, I know you're going to have resources, but after that, being a sheriff, you're going to get thin. So how is it I can help you either through the Highway Patrol, the National Guard, or what can we do at the state level to help you?
Let's talk about something that's been in the news a lot. Yeah, you've signed one of the largest, most sweeping pro-life bills in the history of the state of Missouri and maybe the country. There was a lot of controversy surrounding that. That the issue has passion a great deal on both sides. Your whole career, I mean, I can't even imagine how many meetings you've been to and speeches you've given that talk about being pro-life. It had to feel the weight of the office maybe the day you signed that landmark piece of legislation.
Yeah, that's such an emotional-driven issue for people all across the state. Whether you're pro or con to that issue, you're not changing very many opinions with that. Most people already got their mind set up on where they are on that issue. But I thought it was important for the state of Missouri. Supermajorities in the House and the Senate both voted for that bill. And again, when it come to my desk, it wasn't much of a decision at all, other than you do realize that this is a very emotional issue for a lot of people. But to me, it's the right thing to do. As I said in the beginning, I think protecting life is one of the things that we should do and that I should do as a governor of the state of Missouri. For the people that don't have a voice, I should do everything I can within my powers to make sure they do have a voice.
Well, it's something that anyone's followed your career. I mean, you've been pro-life from the time in the State House.
Yeah, for me, it's just my Christian values. It's who I am. I haven't changed for that. I haven't wavered from that. I've been that all along. So I don't think it was no surprise that I was going to sign the bill.
Yeah. There's a lot of controversy right now about the Planned Parenthood clinic in St. Louis that's announced they may have to close. I think some people are conflating the two issues with the law and the procedure which may force their closure. There's an actual practical reason, if I'm not wrong, where the state wants to interview some doctors about some medical procedures that have been complicated,
Right.
and they're not allowing those doctors to speak to them. Is that
Well,
correct?
yeah, that's one of the problems they have. But I think it's important for people to understand this investigation started back in March. This and it doesn't have anything to do with the pro-life bill at all. This is a health clinic in the state of Missouri along with 4,000 others. But all of those clinics have to meet the state law, have to meet the guidelines and the rules and regulations of the departments. And unfortunately, they weren't doing that. And once we found that out, we started opening up an investigation, and we found multiple deficiencies in there, have given them an opportunity, says, okay, here's what the deficiencies are, here's what you need to do to fix the problems. And until just here recently, it was the first response we had back. But yeah, there's some serious violations in there, and we need to talk to those doctors to find out what happened and who's responsible for that.
So let's talk about something that's a piece of good news. The legislative session you had to be very, very pleased. You had your highway bill through. You also passed some workforce development stuff, and probably kind of inside of a piece of legislation that's going to help bring in $1 billion worth of investment in Wentzville. That's got to be why you actually want to run for office, right?
Well, I think that's one of the things that you really, the reward at the end of the day for all the hard work that happened.
Yeah.
From day one when I started, I went out and I listened to people, and I felt like I really wanted to make sure I knew what they wanted and what was it where Missouri was headed. And one of the two things that come out clearly in that was the workforce development piece, doing something for the next generations and for people to get those qualified jobs. And how do you move people up on the food chain, for better terms? But how do you get them to a better job? And how do you meet the demands of that? And that's what we focus on the entire time. And never changed off that topic. I really stayed on that. The infrastructure is a piece that we all know in the state of Missouri. Everybody knows. We need to do something with infrastructure in the state of Missouri. It was just a question of how do we pay for it. So to get that done and to work with the legislatures, both in the House and the Senate, and to get that moving forward, getting something done, both of those two were huge issues for us. And to get them accomplished in your first year, as you know, at that place, a lot of times it takes 3 or 4 years to get something done.
I've watched you slow down a few governor's priorities in the day when you were in the Senate.
That could have been, but at least ways I know how to do it both ways now on that. But it was a good session for us. We did that. We got to do some reorganization of state government. We always talk about how do you make it, a better, more efficient and smaller. We got to do some things like that. Closing down a prison, was another thing that we done that I thought was very important to get done for the state of Missouri.
Kind of sends a message too.
Yeah, you know what? I think the thing of it is we incarcerate over 30,000 people in the state, and we're not doing a very good job preparing them for the workforce demands when they get out. And that was one of the things I really wanted to focus on, which goes back to that original piece of workforce. Those people are going to be part of the workforce under what plan we have to be able to get them ready to go back to the workforce.
A lot of things you talk about in an age where there's not that many real things. There's always sometimes a lack of authenticity in people in government. The things you talk about are actual, real, mature things. I know it's probably tougher to talk about things like highways, but it's got to feel good when you actually see some progress.
Yeah, it is, Scott, and it's what people want. When you really listen to people, and I think that sometimes that politicians sometimes maybe fail a little bit, but sometimes some politicians think they know what's best for everybody.
Sure.
But I think the way to be successful is to be a good listener. Find out what it is those people really want and go after those issues. And that's exactly what we did this year.
Well, whether you agree with you or not, there is a sense of authenticity that comes out of you when they see you speak or meet you in person.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, what you see is what you get. And I'm going to do the best I can. And I'm going to put Missouri first. I can tell you that right now. I don't owe anybody anything. The way I come into office, under the extreme circumstances I come in. But honestly, the first day of being governor, I didn't owe anybody anything. All I had to do was go in there and do my job and really focus on trying to be a good governor and try to make sure what is the best thing for the citizens of this state.
Let's talk about how you've worked with the legislature. You had Speaker Har, very talented Speaker of the House you have to work with. The Senate's always interesting. I watched some of the things. There was a small caucus in the Senate of Republicans that didn't always see eye to eye. The Democrats, of course, are going to see things differently. They come to it differently. It was interesting, though. I watched you when you were lieutenant governor. You observed the Senate more than anybody had ever seen before, so you kind of knew these people and their personalities.
Right.
It had to help some that you've sat in those chairs and you've done those filibusters and you've had those discussions to have the results you found.
Yeah, you know what? That experience does matter in this particular case. But for me, it's always finding out, okay, what's the solution and can a solution be had? But if I can figure out what the dynamics are, what the parameters are of 1 through 10, I can get in there somewhere. I feel like if I can get at the table, I can bring people together, we can figure out a solution.
And you didn't get everything you wanted chapter and verse. You had to compromise as well.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah, and it was the main thing is on the infrastructure piece, we had the House involved. They had a plan. The Senate had a plan. I had a plan. That's great. I don't care. We'll put them together. We'll figure out a plan.
And that's kind of what happened, right? There was a mix of those plans together.
Yeah.
There's an interesting part. There's just a way Missourians treat each other. There's a way Midwesterners treat each other. And it seemed like that, while we don't always agree, that Midwestern kind of way we all get along kind of came back to the cabin a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's important. You respect people,
Yeah.
even when they disagree with you. When they have a different opinion than what you have, but you still respect them for that. And as long as people can do that, and most Missourians are, that they find out. And I go out all the time, and somebody will say, "Well, I don't agree with you on this and this, but I sure like what you're doing here."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, well, good. Well, we're going to try to get here and there, and we'll discuss this down the road." But I think that's that important thing, again, being a good listener. And really, the second thing is trying to do what's right. And if you're doing what's right, there's not a lot of argument to it a lot of times. They're really not.
Well, I think by any account, the first year has been successful. Have you thought about running for 4 more of them?
Yeah, well, sure, I thought about that. I think about it many times. I've told people's asked me that, and we're going to make that decision before long. But it's a family decision for me, and there's just been so much happen after the session with the floodings and the tornadoes. It's even been difficult for me to just get my family together to have a conversation. So, but I'm going to sit down and talk to my family. I feel good right now. And if I feel like, hey, Missouri's wanting Mike Parson to be the leader, then I'm going to take that into consideration. But it'll be a family decision.
What are your chances on getting the First Lady's endorsement? It seems like that might be the determining factor.
Oh, well, that may be difficult. I don't know what it'll cost me to get that. But I think she'll be okay. And, she's doing a great job. I want to say that, too, while I'm here. As the First Lady of the state of Missouri, she has just opened up the mansion and to be out there on the trail with me a lot of times when she don't have to be. She's just been a great steward for the state and just doing a lot of great things.
Speaking of, you've made 2 picks that kind of stand out. You picked a lieutenant governor that really embodies a lot of Missouri, and the attorney general pick that a lot of these laws you're signing may get passed to him to defend. You have to feel pretty good about the 2 picks you've made there in statewide offices.
Yeah, we have. Well, we did that in the state treasurer also. Scott Fitzpatrick is one of those picks that we selected there too. But all of those picks that I have, I've been very proud of them, and they did what we asked them to do. The only simple thing I asked them go in there. I want you to work hard. And I want you to do the best job you can. And that's what I ask all of them. And they have done that at this point. They've been very supportive. They've been involved in the legislative process, which you very seldom see that. And the other thing I'm proud of, we was at a ribbon cutting ceremony just before I come here. They're all there. They're there supporting businesses in the state of Missouri and employers and employees. And that's the kind of people I want around me to help me.
Well, Governor, you and the First Lady will be in everyone's thoughts when you deal with the victims of this flooding. It's a terrible thing, and we'll all be thinking about you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for saying that. It's tough times.
Thank you for joining us here on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Always good to be here, Scott. Thank you.
We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel. Representative Mary Elizabeth Coleman joins us.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
At Ameren, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like, and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. Opinion Maker panel time. The very dapperly dressed Representative Wiley Price. Welcome back.
Good to be back. Thanks
And Jane Dueker, friend of the show, your face looks a little less blue than I saw it on Twitter.
Well, I know, and the face painting, but it didn't work that day. That was the first game, so I didn't face paint for last night's game, and it worked out perfectly.
I believe in karma.
I do too.
Representative, first time on the show, Representative Dottie Bailey, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thank you.
And Mary Elizabeth Coleman from Jefferson County, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about a bill that I know you were very, you put a lot of time in working on.
Sure.
It was the sweeping pro-life legislation that was signed by Governor Parson.
Yeah.
I have to say, when you look at the effects of it and the ripples going forward, it really had the gravity. Even when you're in the chamber, third reading that bill, there was a lot of gravity to the moment and the situation. When you do that much work on something, it had to feel in that room when he was signing that, a lot of work coming to fruition.
No matter what side of the aisle you are on, I think a lot of times people who've been working on this issue, they've been doing so for most of their adult lives, maybe even as children. And so it felt bigger than that for me as an adoptive mom of kids who would have been protected by the bill, who loved ones. I can't tell you how much it meant to me to watch him sign that bill.
Representative Bailey, you come in the legislature your first year, and one of the first things you get to really take on is probably definitely the most pro-life legislation the state's ever seen.
Truly, and when the session started, we had New York and Virginia, doing their, 9-month abortion, and it was, unbelievable. And then this happened, and so it's just been a whirlwind. But I'm very proud to be a part of it and protecting the babies. And I know there's a lot of, it's a lot of division, but it's just one of those things. It's not even a political issue in my mind. It's more an ideology, and that's where I think there's no gray. It's black or white. And unfortunately, I know there's a lot of upset people, but at the end of the day, we're going to save more babies, and we're thrilled about that.
This is an issue that has been as divisive in Missouri as any state in the union. This piece of legislation, obviously, I think a lot of its critics pointed to the non-exclusions for rape and incest. And there's been an outpouring on both sides, maybe of joy on the pro-life side, but on the pro-choice side, I think there's been just as much, if maybe not more, passion flowing about trying to oppose the legislation. I guess the next fight goes to court.
Yes, and this goes so far, and it sets us back generations, frankly, and like you said, people have lived with this their entire lives, and I think it is very upsetting for women to have to say, okay, we don't get a choice over our own bodies. I think there are a lot of reasonable people who believe that there should be reasonable restrictions, but this goes so far that I think it's going to send women into back rooms, and we all know. Some of us are old enough to know what that was like in recent history, and women's lives are going to be in danger, and I don't understand that. And so I think this is going to be a fight we're going to have nationally. We're going to have it in Missouri, and it's very disheartening. And so I think the opposition will be revved up. I think politically, I don't know about Missouri, but nationally, I think going too far is going to be something that's going to have political ramifications as well. And so, I'm disheartened. I like Governor Parson, and I like a lot of the people I disagree with vehemently in the legislature. But this one, it feels personal to a lot of women. And so I think it's going to be an issue that's going to continue.
Representative Price, you were on the other side of this argument in the legislature. There's a lot of passion on both sides, but now the fight, I guess, goes to court, right?
That's correct. And I think that is a part of the argument for a lot of people on my side, is that it feels kind of disingenuous. A lot of people feel as though this is really about Roe v. Wade and being able to challenge that landmark decision as opposed to saving women's lives. That is a large part of the struggle, as well as the incest and rape being left in. That's also a very, very difficult hill to climb for a lot of people on my side. And I think for me, just personally, I'm worried about the ripple effect of the state losing more money, the people not wanting to be here, women moving out of the state. There are people, Georgia just passed a similar bill. There are people in Hollywood, they're saying they're never going to film there, they're never going to come there because of these policies that we're making. So I think that the ripple effect, to me, is just as much of a concern as the social policy.
I thought at least you were being genuine. You said, this is about the babies, and I feel like it's disingenuous as well to say this is about the women. It's not about the women. The women don't get to choose. And so, but at least you're being honest about your position that this is about the babies over the women, and the women, a lot of women feel like this is, you know, their choice too, and that they should have a choice. And so, yeah, I'm with you that I think the idea that this is women's health care is disingenuous. But you know, and you're allowed to have that opinion, but I mean, at least I think you're being honest about what this is about. It's about, you know, unborn, you know, versus a woman's choice, and that's what it is.
It is an interesting thing. I think you get put on, I think women in the Republican Party who are pro-life become almost ambassadors for some of these policies, and people kind of come to you first to criticize or probably to praise you. That is an interesting banner you have to hold up, and now with the developments that have happened, the Planned Parenthood clinic in St. Louis, the last one that performs abortion in the state, may not get their license renewed, and it's come down to the governor separated the two issues from the legislation to the process of inspections, but that could be the case that Missouri has no abortions, and I think that there are folks that will think that's very bad, but I think there's a lot of pro-life people I know that will think that's what they've worked for.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we just look at it as life, and that's why it's hard that this is a political issue when it's really not. It's either it's life or it's death for these babies, and you know, yeah, I get called 1,000 names, and you know, the misogynist, you know, mistress, you know, anything you can think of, but it doesn't bother me because, you know, this is a hard issue, and I love women. I am a woman. It's not that, and there are provisions, you know, in the bill, but you know, it's a baby, it's a life, and I cherish life, and you know, it's just something that I wish there was an easier way to do this. And if we do become the first state without Planned Parenthood, I mean, I will celebrate that. I mean, because that means more babies' lives, I mean, are not
Give me a prediction. You're an attorney. Does this withstand a court challenge?
Yeah, I think it does. I really do. I think that the bill was written, I'm sorry, let's separate the two issues because it's separate. Yeah. You were talking with Representative Bailey about the challenge with the health license. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about House Bill 106? I think it withstands. It's been written to withstand it. I know there's a lot of conversation about this is meant as a challenge to Roe. Clearly Alabama, clearly Georgia's laws are aimed at that. This is really about saving lives, and it is about women's health care. I think that when you talk to women, there is no environment where a woman is feeling like she has to make a choice between her child or her economic success. That's a false narrative, and I'd like us to see not just where abortion is illegal, but also unthinkable, and that women have every support possible that they can choose to parent or choose to place for adoption. Because in my experience, the pregnancy isn't the crisis. A woman's life is already in crisis, and the pregnancy is exacerbating that.
With you, and I have to piggyback off that by saying, as long as we live in a world where women can be fired for being pregnant, we do live in that world. There are always going to be women who have to make the choice of economic wealth, of economic trajectory versus having a child.
Well, and you know, I'm a strong supporter of women. I backed a number of proposals this session to try to support women in all areas, whether it's through sex trafficking, whether it's feminine hygiene products in prisons, whether it's maternal shackling. But I also think it's a little disingenuous to say, okay, pro-life people have to be all of these other things first. Nobody says to the Alzheimer's Association, why are you not trying to solve diabetes? I'm here, I'm trying to protect women, I'm trying to protect children, and that's my position, and a lot of other Missourians across the state.
But a lot of people think that when you say you're pro-life and pro-children, that also applies after they're born. And when you look at, you know, that we are failing in early childhood education, we're failing in children's health care, we're failing in every area, I start to feel like that there's more attention paid to, you know, children or cells that are not born, you know, versus children that are born, and I'm concerned about that.
And is possible. And you look at Representative Bailey, all of the bills that you filed were working on access to health care for children, for those who have disabilities, and education.
Our education is failing.
Back. In early childhood, we don't have it.
Jane Dueker, let's talk about a person that was just on the show. It's been a year since he's been in office. Give me the 1-year grade on Governor Mike Parson.
There are a lot of things I disagree with him on. This bill is one of them, and I'm strenuously opposed. But he is someone that I can talk to about being opposed, and I can have a conversation with him and vehemently disagree with him, and I respect that the one thing that I think he has done exceptionally well is he will reach out and he will talk to everyone. And I think at the time he became governor, our state needed someone who could calm the waters and someone that could, just be a leader, and he has been, and I like that he is, and it's not, you never get the idea that it's about him. You get the idea that he's out there, he wants to help people, he wants to be with Missourians. I feel that, and I think that that is important, and I worked for someone who was like that, and that, you know, it was about the people, and it was always about the people. And so, yeah, there's some policy stuff I don't agree with, but I applaud his stance on transportation, and he stuck his neck out there and has continued to stick his neck out there for our transportation, and he believes in early childhood. Those are things
President Bailey, it's been a year for Governor Mike Parson. What do you think?
I think he did a great job. I actually got to tell him he has a good healing presence over the, you know, the whole state, especially at the Capitol. The mood there, I wasn't there last year, but it was very congenial, and he's just a nice person, and it was, you know, he and I don't even agree on everything, but he still is kind. And, you know, after last year it was a little rough, so it's nice having that kind of mood in the Capitol. So,
Representative Price, what do you think of Governor Parson's first year?
I really, again, I'm with Jane. I disagree with some of his things that he signed off on, obviously the abortion bill, but I appreciate what he's done for transportation. I appreciate what he's done for criminal justice. That was a huge deal in his State of the State, and just him saying we are not going to open up any more jails. I think that is a huge step in the right direction for the entire state as well as our workforce.
Representative, what do you think? Been a year, somebody you've actually now worked with pretty closely. What do you think?
I got an opportunity to work with him on the reorganization of the Economic Development Department, and I just think he brings a real steady hand. He's a lifetime public servant. He has served the state and fellow citizens in basically every capacity that you can, and it has a real humble touch. So he's a guy who you saw in freshman offices meeting with them. He's a guy who invites any representative or senator to come to any of his events that are in their districts, and I just think that a huge win with the GM and some of the other fast tracks, and so I think he gets an A+.
Who won the week?
I'm going to give it to a guy on the Democratic side, Stephen Roberts. He's running for Senate. We haven't had a black elected senator in the last 20 years before Brian Williams. I'd like to see that window shut immensely.
Who won the week?
Craig Berube. I mean, he's like leadership. I mean, this team it's been, you know, it's great. It's the Blues, and I know it's sports, but what I like to see is a man who is a leader and who has taken a group of men and gotten them to believe in themselves when they were in last place. And every time they got knocked down, and I sort of feel like St. Louis is sort of like that. Sometimes we get knocked down, but we got to get right back up, and they represent that.
Who won the week?
I am not a big sports fan, but I am thrilled. I have many friends, as you know, that are huge hockey fans, and I'm thrilled for my friends that they won. I'm thrilled for the city. I'm thrilled for the state to keep going. But I got to also say, it's all those people out filling sandbags as well, because that's huge.
Who won the week?
So I think that you have to give it to Governor Parson. He's done an amazing job with the flooding and tornado. We've been hit hard by a lot of terrible weather, and his administration's been right there supporting people every step of the way.
We're off last week. I'm going to go back a week and say fellow Jefferson County and Governor Nixon had the honor of having the state hospital at Fulton named after him. It's very well deserved. We hope you'll come back and watch us. We'll talk about another busy week on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.